Welcome to the Pursuing Freedom Outdoors podcast, a place where backcountry warriors can share their stories of grit, service, healing, and wilderness adventures. I'm your host, Tom Walton, Marine Corps veteran, full-time cop, and aspiring hunting and fishing guide. Join me and others as we journey from the hood to the woods in pursuit of freedom in the outdoors. All right, everybody. Welcome to the Pursuing Freedom Outdoors podcast. This is episode 18, and today I am joined by a really good friend of mine, Andrew Jayne. Andrew is a pretty long-time hunter and angler of all kinds of different pursuits. He's fly fisherman, bass fisherman. Andrew is extensive background in waterfowl hunting. And he's been pretty instrumental in a lot of my outdoor pursuits, most particularly fly fishing. So don't have a real formal bio on Andrew tonight, so we're just going to kind of let him get into that and share his background himself tonight. And then we're going to just kind of talk about Andrew's mule deer hunt because it was his first hunt, and just kind of focusing on how he did that himself. Andrew decided he wanted to hunt a mule deer. He has some limitations that made that even more challenging, but not only did he plan and execute a successful first mule deer hunt, but he did so under some duress, for lack of better terms, and I couldn't be more proud of him as my friend, as an outdoorsman. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Andrew to the show. Buddy, thank you for joining me tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Tom. It's good to be here.
Yeah, man. Andrew also, he and I share in common a pretty strong faith in Jesus, and I think he would like to open with a prayer tonight. So I'm not going to deny a brother believer an opportunity to open with a prayer. So Andrew, if you want to do that, man, you're welcome. Let's go for it.
For sure. Well, dear Lord, I just ask that we have a wonderful night tonight. I just ask that you bless not only myself, Tom, but everyone listening to this. I ask for peace in our lives, for prosperity, and I just ask for the mental toughness, fortitude, for any struggles that anyone listening to this might have. I know what it's like to be there, and I just ask that you bless all of us with your Holy Spirit, and you get us through the hard times, you get us through the temptations, you open doors for us when they're needed, and you close others that, aren't. So I ask all this in your mighty name, and just bless every single one of us. In your name, amen.
Amen. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. And I would echo the sentiment. Part of the podcast is that I want to inspire folks out there to try new things and get out there and do the things that, kind of like you, right? If they want to go on a mule deer hunt and they haven't done that before, to be able to get out there and do that, or if they want to pursue a career in the outdoors, that they might have the inspiration through this podcast to go do that. So well said, man. Anyways, Andrew, why don't we just kind of get started with you telling the listeners a little bit about where you come from and what got you into hunting, how you started in the outdoors.
Yeah, for sure. Inevitably, what got me started in the outdoors was I grew up in a town of 18 people in Central California. And, you got to love that you're from California, but I was from a part that was so vastly different from everywhere else in the state. We had still the only functioning one-room schoolhouse in the entire state. Giant ranches out there. We're talking like 20,000 acre ranches. And, we had a little slice of it. It wasn't a 20,000 acre ranch, but we had a back 40, and we leased that out for alfalfa and hay. So we'd have hogs that came into that. And so I grew up depredating them with my dad. I grew up upland hunting, all the quail, the dove, and even some turkeys every now and then. Wasn't the best at turkeys, but thanks to you, I've gotten a little bit better. But yeah, growing up, it was a lot of fun. I never grew up deer hunting, but I had my dad to teach me how to fish, and we were really into that. But, I think all of that is important into me growing into what I have today. Because without that, it's still, it would be cool to say that I had shot a deer early in my life. I had done all of these different things early. I had someone teach me, but not having that and watching myself grow as a hunter and being able to do things by myself, I think that's kind of cool. So, yeah, I mean, I moved to North Idaho about 5 years ago. That's pretty much the first time I really started deer hunting or elk hunting avidly. We had turkey hunts in Northern California when I went to college, but that was pretty much just stalking the vineyards, doing more of like a spot and stalk on the rolling hills out there. Not really gobbling them in, anything like that, calling them. Um, yeah, we weren't listening for the gobbles, I should say. It was definitely an interesting way of turkey hunting. But yeah, it's been fun to watch myself grow and have people like you to help me grow and mentor me through this whole thing.
Right on, man. Yeah, that's awesome. And I agree with you. I think as much as it's awesome to have a background where you're born and raised in in hunting, deer hunting, whatever it is. I mean, obviously you do have the fact that you grew up doing some sort of hunting.
Hmm.
For example, like I didn't grow up with any kind of hunting in my family. We camped a lot, but we didn't hunt. We did a lot of camping, a lot of
Yeah.
fishing, a lot of kayaking on the ocean, on lakes, on rivers. So we were in the outdoors, but didn't hunt. So it's cool you had that background, but I do understand and appreciate the whole, having to kind of figure it out on your own later and being self-taught. I've been very fortunate where I've had some really good mentors, but there's also been a lot that I just had to go out and learn the hard way through experience and spending a lot of time in the field. And I know that it's been the same way for you. So since coming to Idaho, you've gotten into deer, you're working on figuring out the elk hunting situation and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, the past
So
2 years have been a little interesting for figuring out the elk situation. And I was talking to a buddy earlier who's like, "Man, I'm gonna kill an elk next year. Like, you better figure it out. I'm gonna kill more elk than you in Idaho." And I said, "Hey, man, whatever you want to believe." But I firmly believe that next year, once all of my injuries and everything have been fixed, that I'm gonna be able to get back to doing elk. The first 2 years, I mean, the first year I rifle hunted, the second year, I went out with a bow, had plenty of opportunities with the bow. None of them really came together like I wanted. So next year, I think it's going to be the year. I have a good feeling.
elk are challenging, man, and there's a steep learning curve. And I agree with you. I think you're going to do really well next year and for years to come. So before we dive into your mule deer hunt, I kind of just want to share with folks the story of how you and I came to know each other because I think it's kind of a cool
Yeah.
story. So I'll start it off because
Mhm.
I think that flows, and then I'll just kind of let you share your side of it,
For
and
sure.
then you have had a pretty significant influence in, like I said, in my life, especially in regards to fly fishing, and we'll get to there. So I definitely want to
Okay.
share that before we get into your mule deer hunt. So the reason that I know Andrew for the listeners is because probably about, 5 years ago now, I was out doing some spring turkey hunting on a very small piece of public not far from where I live. And I say small, but that's in Idaho terms. It was a pretty small piece of public and pretty pressured spot, but I wanted to check it out one day. So I went up in there and was doing my thing in the morning, and while I was kind of stomping around the brush, and kind of walking in one of those places that, I mean, yes, there's a lot of people there, but I had to beat some brush to get to this one spot. And when I got to this one spot, I was like, oh man, that was kind of a pain in the butt to get through all that brush. I bet not a lot of people do that. And as soon as I had that thought, I looked down at the ground, and at my feet was a bright orange tag wallet. And so for people that don't understand what I'm talking about, tag wallet is just that plastic holder that when you buy your hunting or fishing license, most all sporting goods stores will give you that little plastic holder for them. So that would be like your tag and license wallet or tag and white license holder. And I saw that orange, bright orange, like Hunter's orange plastic thing on the ground. Picked it up, and the name on the license, it was a hunting license and 2 turkey tags. So first thing I thought, I was like, man, this person's going to want these because he hasn't even filled one yet. And two, Man, that's just that's a bummer to have your stuff dropped with all your info on it in the woods. So it was pretty easy for me as a police officer, or honestly just anybody, to pretty quickly figure out who Andrew was using the information on his license. And I reached out to him. I think I reached out via social media at first, and just said, "Hey man, I found your license and wallet, or your license and tags on the ground. Yeah, I'd like to get these back to you." And you responded, and we came up with uh, a meeting place. And the day that we were supposed to meet, I told you that, hey man, like, don't be worried because I'm gonna meet you up. Sorry, let me get my dog out of the way real.
So just to continue his story, he messaged me saying that he was gonna show up in a police cruiser.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know where you took over.
You. No,
Yeah,
I just finished that part of the story that you said you were gonna show up in a police cruiser.
yeah, because I was working that day, and the place we were going to arrange to meet was a sportsman's warehouse inside of the city that I was assigned to work on patrol that day. So, yeah, I let you know, and I'll kind of let you share your side of the story because I think it's just kind of funny because that probably threw you for a loop when you heard me or read that I was going to meet you in a police car.
Yeah, man, it was definitely funny. It was my first year hunting up here, and that would mean that I've been here for 6 years now. Um, so my first year in after my 6 months of being a resident, because you're not allowed to get resident tags until you've been here at least 6 months. Um, so it was my first year like actually hunting up here, having some fun. I didn't even realize that I dropped my like license or anything. I I remember that I had taken my hunting pants off, and they're always in one of my pockets. And those are just the pants that I throw on. I keep in my truck or my car at the time for whenever I go out. I might go out for an evening sit or a morning sit just before or after work, something like that, and on the way home. And so I always just keep my licenses in there. So it came as a massive surprise when you, Tom, messaged me and said, "Hey, I found your license." And I said, "What?" And I went and checked my pants, and lo and behold, they were gone. They weren't there. So it was really funny when you did message me and you said, like right before it happened too, right before you got there, you said, "Hey, don't be alarmed." And I just remember it was just I don't even know what went through my head at the time. It was like well, there's no way this is a sting, you know? They're not getting me for hunting without a license or anything, but it was really funny. And I remembered when you pulled up that I had offered you a box of shotgun shells for doing that, and you politely declined because that probably wouldn't have been the best thing to take while you're on patrol. So then I do remember that you saw the fly fishing sticker on the back of my car. And at the time I was a dirtbag, dude. Like I look nothing like I did back then. I had traveled all over the US. I had been a fly fishing guide back east and in Colorado, and was just really in a whitewater raft guide. So I was dirtbaggy, the long hair. I had a beat up Ford Escape. No, not Escape, Focus. A beat up Ford Focus with kayak racks on the top because I was into whitewater kayaking. Yeah, you saw that sticker on the back of my Ford Escape, and you were like, "Do you fly fish?" I said, "Yeah, I fly fish." Said, "Well, how about this? What if you took me out and taught me how to fly fish sometime?" And I said, "Yeah, man, I've taught a bunch of people how to fly fish. That'd be a fun time." Definitely the highlight of the story was that, just because that really cemented and furthered us getting to know each other and hanging out.
It was funny because I didn't know what necessarily what you were going to look like or drive or anything like that. You had said like, "Yeah, I'll be in a Ford Focus," and um, so it's like no big deal. But I showed up, and yeah, I mean I've told you this since, but if I were profiling you, yeah, dude, I'd have profiled you as like not necessarily like a full on dirtbag, but you were like this young hipster kid, quite shaggy.
Hmm. I was real shaggy. I wouldn't call it full hipster though. Careful about throwing that one out there.
All right. No offense to our hipster listeners, man. It's just it was funny. If you had seen a side by side of him with me in uniform, you'd be like, "No, those guys aren't gonna get along."
I do shoot a 6.5 Creedmoor though, so
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
discussion for
Well,
another time. I'm sensed. Not that I own a 6.5 Creedmoor, but I've told you numerous times I will eventually own one. I want this probably gonna be my next rifle. So I don't know, man. I don't know if it was just your demeanor or what, but I just picked up pretty quickly. I was like, this dude's a good guy, man. And I figured, like, worst case scenario, if you were trying to take me down to some river and to, I don't know, murder me or something, like, I probably could defend myself. So, but I just thought, dude, like, this guy seems pretty good to go. He seemed like a nice dude. Your demeanor was solid. And yeah, you had the fly fishing sticker on your car and you had some sort of like, fly fishing hat thing going on. I don't know if you had like a fly in the brim of your hat or something, but I just
yeah,
saw
it
that
was
and I
a
was like,
Rapier
man,
water and the, with a fly right there.
I had been recently interested in the idea of getting into fly fishing. So that's just, hey, dude, do you fly fish? And you told me a little bit about your fly fishing background. And that sounds like, yeah, man. Instead of me taking ammo in my police car right now and that looking really shady out here, like, why don't you just let's go fishing? You could teach me how to fly fish. And you didn't even hesitate. You just said, yeah, let's do it. And so we did, man. We went out that June. Man, it just had an epic day fly fishing in thunderstorms and rain. And you put me on some pretty sweet first fish, man. Like, it's a day. Still have the pictures, and I'm never gonna forget it. I know you
Oh,
were having a good
100%.
day too.
Yeah. No, that was fun, man. There was a giant hatch and it was a mayfly hatch and it was just awesome. The trout were engorging themselves on all these mayflies and you would catch one and its belly would just be swollen. It was really cool. You did great. You came out with your pre-setup, like what is it, White River or something like that, or like a Cabela setup, something like along those lines. And
The Costco Fenwick.
yeah, yeah. And you were out there, you wanted to learn, you wanted to have fun, and you were willing to learn. That was the biggest thing. So it was a lot of fun. Definitely, I like you said, I still have the pictures, and I look back on that day fondly. It was a great, great time.
That's when I mean, we quickly learned that we could give each other a whole bunch of crap and laugh and enjoy it, man. I think we just been giving each other crap ever since.
Yeah.
It's just it's been a really fun friendship, and I know I'm better off, in a lot of ways. One, I'm a better person because of getting to know you. Two, I've benefited because I don't know how many fly reels you've given me now. I can't even, I'm looking over at them. I can't even count them. But one thing I'll tell the listeners about you is that while you can be a frustratingly stubborn individual, you're one of the most giving people that I've ever met in my life. So anybody that's your friend is going to benefit greatly, whether they want to or not. I mean, you're just who you are. It's in your nature. I don't think you can help yourself.
My
But yeah,
girlfriend would
man.
definitely agree with that first sentiment there. The frustratingly stubborn. But I come around, I try.
Well, I
I do
think
my
that's
best.
why it's probably why we get along, man, because I'm a pretty stubborn fella myself. So I think my wife and your girlfriend would agree on both of our accounts. So,
100%. Yeah.
and what's special about that fly fishing aspect to how we became buddies is that fly fishing, for the listeners should know if they've listened to a number of the podcasts, is turned into a major part of my life. Just not just as an outdoor pursuit, but I have since guided fly fishing. I've gone to a fly fishing guide school and have turned around and am using what I've learned from you on my own at the school to take some veterans and first responders, their families out fly fishing at Protector's Peak. And I would encourage anybody that maybe hasn't to go back and listen to the episode. There's not too many episodes yet, so it's easy to go back and find the one where I interview Nate Harder, who runs the show over there with his amazing wife, Becky, at Protector's Peak. And that, I mean, that has truly been life changing. I'm on the board there. I'm heavily involved in that organization, and that is purely because I go there and take people fly fishing and what fly fishing has done for me. So that that's something that is, like I was asking you before the show, man. I don't even know if we've ever talked about how significant you introducing me to fly fishing has been in my life.
Yeah, I'm really glad. Like stoked to hear it, dude. you know, I'm so glad that that alone has changed and catapulted you into many different things. I also remember the day that we went out up near Bonners and we took the rafts out, and I got to teach a bunch of your buddies how to fly fish too, and got to show you kind of how to read water. Got to show you where the fish would be holding, and that was awesome, man. It gave you some techniques on like how to row when other people are fishing, and that was cool. It's so powerful when one tiny little thing like finding someone's tags in in the forest can launch you down a path that not only betters yourself but betters other people. That's not just me saying that that's what I did for you. That's me saying, sometimes God opens these doors that you don't realize at the time how amazing it's going to be, but just the smallest little thing, man, can really like change your life around. And I'm no stranger to that. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into this at some point, but I was in a terrible accident. I had a heat stroke last year that put me out of work and almost killed me, so I was in the hospital. Then I got out. I had Bell's palsy on part of my one side of my face, and then immediately after that I was rear-ended on my motorcycle, and that put me in the hospital again. And now I've been through two surgeries from that, and um it's it's really been amazing to see how that's changed my life around. So just like your little thing, one little thing can change your life around completely. And I've been so blessed with how this has been going. There's hard times. It's hard to get your mind out of the gutter, but I mean, you're no stranger to that either. And being your friend through all of that, and you being my friend through what I've been going through, it's really been truly amazing. But even though you go through things like that, it's it's important to remember not to give up. You can still do the things that you want to do. It's not going to be easy, and when you get to the mule deer story, it's not easy, you know, but you have to have the mental fortitude to push through, and just trust that you'll make it out. Trust in God. I had prayers before that hunt that I was praying, and it came, it came in full circle, and it's pretty amazing.
Absolutely, man. You just never know. And on that note of surgeries and injuries, I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on for sure to talk about overcoming those kinds of difficulties. And I don't know how much I've talked about on the podcast yet, but I'm suffering from a back injury. I'm having surgery next month. And, chronic pain, because this has been lasting me for many years. And chronic pain, especially when it actually starts affecting what you do, the things you love. I've had to be put off on light duty from SWAT, so I haven't been doing anything on SWAT. And for the listeners that don't know, being on the SWAT team at the sheriff's office where I work has been one of the highlights of my career. It's been a highlight of my life. There's not a lot more that is as rewarding as doing the work that we do with the brothers that I get to do it with, and having to just stop while I try to figure out my back injury, and the uncertainties surrounding it has been really hard. Some folks know that I had aspirations of going to Alaska over the last couple of years. There's been a whole number of things, right? Missing hunts because of it, and thankfully my fall turned out to be pretty good. But it does take a toll on your mental health. It wears on you. It can really, that's how people get into depressions, right? And then next thing you know, substance abuse if you're taking painkillers. And I mean, it can be a really dark hole and a drain. I could tell you, it's been humbling for me. I'm sure it's the same for you because we're both pretty young dudes, right? I mean, you're 29, right? And I'm
Yes, sir.
37. So I wouldn't consider either of us old guys. And I would say, I mean, we're quite frankly, we're young men. And to just all of a sudden going from able to do everything I want to do and going 100 miles an hour, nothing slowing me down. It's been like all of a sudden my feet are in cement. I'm not in the shape that I'm used to being in. I'm not able to do my job. I'm on light duty. I'm stuck at a desk. And, I'm looking forward at the future with a lot of uncertainty. Things that I wanted to do got taken away from me. And for a while, I got pretty down too. But I can just kind of on that God thing that you mentioned, man, what his, what I have realized is that through all of this, you have a choice. You can either do the woe is me, look at all the things going wrong, my life is over or it's different, never be the same, whatever you want to tell yourself, or you can count your blessings and use whatever circumstance you're in to still glorify God. And I can tell you right now that when I sat down and really thought that through, it's actually amazing to the point where I'm really thankful. I have thanked God for my back injury. And the reasons being for me is that one, it forced me to slow down, spend more time with my wife. Our marriage is stronger than ever because we've spent time together and we've spent time together going to church and focusing on Christ. Our marriage is the strongest it's ever been. I mean, she's always been my best friend since we got married, but I mean, it's just even more true than ever before today. And that's because God sat my butt down and said, son, you need to slow down and spend time with your wife. And if you're not going to do it, I'm just going to break you a little bit and make you do it. And then it took away my opportunity that I had to go to Alaska to do some pretty cool stuff. I won't get into it right now because I don't want my current employer, if they listen to this, to think that I'm not appreciative of my job. I said this several times on the show. Sir, I love my job. Please let me come back to work next week. But I'm glad because there's been things that have happened within my work that I wouldn't have wanted to miss. There's things that have happened like becoming a board member of Protectors Peak that wouldn't have happened if I was in Alaska, and the doors that are currently opening wouldn't be able to have happened if I was in Alaska. I wouldn't be as connected with my church if I was in Alaska. And like I said, man, wouldn't be doing this podcast, wouldn't, I mean, it's everything. It's, to me, it is 100%. When I really sit down and think about it, it makes me want to say, thank you, God, for allowing me to have a back injury. And hey, at the end of the day, I have a good feeling I'll be back to 100%. I got some good news from the surgeon today. My surgery should be pretty simple, and I'm excited about that and fortunate because people I know like you have a lot worse back injuries than what I'm sustained. So that was a long spiel for the host of the show. This is really supposed to be about you, but just because
No,
you and
man.
I we've dealt with back injuries together, and that's been kind of a part of what we've been doing or dealing with as a couple of friends lately.
Then I mean, it's doesn't matter if it's a long spiel for the host. It's powerful to hear those stories. As a man, talking about those things is hard, and for some of us, hearing those things that other people are going through can be powerful. As men of Christ and men of the outdoors. I'll never be back to 100%. Never going to have the range of motion that I used to. I'm never going to be able to carry as much. Probably never going to be able to hike as far. But you know what? I'm gonna do my darndest to try. I'm gonna do my darndest to strive to get back to where I need to be. And just thinking about that, it's been tough. But getting that out there and letting other people hear about that, I really think that's powerful. I think more people need to talk about the struggles that they go through so other people can relate. I'm not paralyzed, which that in itself is such a blessing. I can still walk, I can still hike, before my surgery. That alone was tough. The hiking was probably the hardest part about the hunt. And it was a struggle to get through because I'm used to being able to hike 13 miles, 14 miles, and even just a small 1 mile, 1.5 miles was, granted there was some incline, but shouldn't have been that hard. And going from what I was to what I could do, it's a struggle. It's tough, but just trusting that there's something better for you in the future. And like you said, it slowed me down too. It got me off a path that I wasn't supposed to be going down and put me on a different path that, I praise God every day for. It's really amazing. It's not exactly where I thought I'd be at 29, and I never thought that I'd be, you know, hit on the back of a hit on my motorcycle at 27 and end up in the hospital for a whole night, just from that. And never thought I'd be a hip surgery deep and now a spine surgery. And it really makes you reflect on what you had and what you were doing. But it's important to know that every single day that you wake up, you have X amount of hours before you go to sleep to do something, to be something, no matter how your mindset is. You can always change that. You can always better yourself. You can always do better. And for the people who just sit on the couch, and it's a struggle for me because I'm fresh out of surgery and I sit on the couch all day. But I say this in the best way I can is if you're sitting on the couch and you think that you can't, trust me, I guarantee you can. And I've gained 35, almost 40 pounds since it happened. I'm not in the shape I want to be in. I'm not where I want to be, but I'll get there. And I'm just going through the motions of what I have to do. And it's tough, but that mental fortitude of knowing that I can and knowing that all things are possible through Christ, like having friends like you who check up on me, it's important.
Absolutely, man. Those friendships are critical. Taking care of each other. Um, we can't do life alone, even though a lot of guys, especially outdoors focused folks, we tend to think that we can do, and it's better to do life alone, but that's not how we were designed. We were designed to do life with others. That's the theme verse of Protector's Peak, right? Is the proverb that is iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And I think that's a lot of what you and I have done for each other. It goes both ways. Sometimes you're doing the sharpening and sometimes you dull out and I'm sharpening you, but that's what we do for each other. And it's important to have friends that you can speak truth to, that can speak truth to you, that you'll listen to, and that you can sharpen each other. And I'm really fortunate because I have a whole lot of friends that do some sharpening, because I can get off the rails and dull out pretty quick sometimes and need to get set straight and get resharpened. So, but it's good, man. Yeah, you're 100% right. So you've overcome a lot of challenges, and I could tell folks that I can verify what Andrew here has gone through with the hip surgeries, or hip surgery, the back surgery. It was a very in-depth surgery. You got a fusion, which is never something that somebody as young as you wants to get, but unfortunately that was your option. But it wasn't the worst fusion that somebody could have. So there's always a bright side. Like you said,
always a bright side.
You've got a long recovery ahead of you to get to 100%, but I think we all just, what I need to do once I get my surgery, and the hard part for both of us is taking time to sit on the couch and allow our bodies to heal. But as watching you go through those hardships, I know you'd wanted to do some hunting and go on a mule deer hunt. You've been wanting to get your first mule deer for a few years now. And for whatever reason, friends don't go bail on you. I always end up bailing on you and doing other things. So you finally said, screw it, got frustrated and like, dude, I'm not, if my best friends won't go hunting with me, I guess I'll just go hunt by myself. And that's what you did. So why don't you kind of just walk us through your hunt and just start with how you picked the area. You don't have to tell us what area, but how you picked the area that you wanted to hunt, how you scouted it, and all the way through how you ended up packing out your first mule deer this year.
Yeah, man. I'll start this off by saying I had gone on a previous mule deer hunt with a buddy who's not really a buddy anymore. And we'd gone out there, we'd gone to a spot a couple years back, and we were seeing deer. The first day that we had hiked up there, we were seeing deer, no bucks. But when we came back down that first night, there were hoof prints, like buck tracks right there. And I knew that there were bucks in the area. It was a beautiful draw. This was an area that most people hike into the backcountry or take horses or mules or even dirt bikes. And most of the time they get way back there and they just leave this first draw. And I was pretty confident. I knew there had to be a deer in there, especially with how many does were in there. And we were high as you could go in that area. And ended up coming back down. And my buddy was like, yeah, no, I don't think this is the spot. So he ended up leaving, and that kind of messed me up, got in my head. And since he's leaving, I had to go with him. So uh, that that never sat right in my head, that one hunt. So this last year, I decided, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it right. I want to get a mule deer, and if anyone's gonna get a mule deer for me, it has to be me. I have to make it happen. So I e-scouted this area, found it, went out there and did some scouting. I saw a really nice buck. My first 5 minutes in, I bumped 3 does, and that to me was like it was an amazing experience in itself. When you're seeing that number of animals just scouting, and there were elk cows calling in the bottoms. There was a bull bugling, and I ended up seeing a giant bull and a little raghorn, and it was like yeah, this is where I need to be. This is where I have to come back to. Uh, so I ended up coming back in season, and unfortunately,
let me interrupt
yeah,
you
go
real
ahead.
quick. Just what time of year were you scouting, and then what time of year did you come back for your hunt, and what
Yeah, so
elevation? How did you know they were still going to be there?
for sure, I didn't know that they were still going to be there, but I just had a good feeling that if they weren't at the tops, like I was seeing them, and I saw some down in the backs of the draws, and then a couple down towards the bottom. I was out there in mid-August, and to hear a bull bugling that early was wild to me. But I mean, the bulls were 500 yards away from the cows at the time, and it was just cool to watch them, see the deer as well, see what they were doing. That's really the first time that I've actually gone to an area and taken the time to scout that hard. It wasn't as hard as some people do, but given my circumstances, I feel like it was hard enough. And then yeah, like I said, I didn't know that they would be there. I just had a good feeling about it. It just seemed like an area that they would be there year round. And if they weren't in that exact spot, they would be, like I said, maybe down in the bottoms, or um, pushed further down the canyon. Uh, but I just had an inkling, like a really good feeling that they would stay there.
What
There was
elevation were
enough
you hunting
cover
at?
for them. Oh geez, 6,500 to 7,500
It's a
in
pretty
that
pretty
elevation.
high.
Yeah, pretty high. And like I said, I didn't go down to the bottoms. At the far end of the draw, it got down to about 5,500. Steep country. In Idaho, a lot of the mule deer hunts are in steep country, so you have that range in elevation, and if they get caught in the snow belt, they can always move below that in these draws. So, or they can move down. They can't really go out, obviously, because we have some rivers that make it pretty impassable. But I don't know. I don't pretend to know what mule deer do during the winter. I don't pretend to know that I know exactly what their migratory patterns are going to be, anything like that. So when I say I had an inkling, that's really just what it was. And it turned out to be great. I came back mid-October. I got there the day of opening day, and unfortunately that was a day too late because there were already 3 other cars there. One of them was a giant drop camp that someone had set up, and he had dogs running around, and it didn't feel great getting into a spot where I hadn't seen another person, um, and I'd known about, and just it didn't feel great. So I parked. I went up and talked with 2 of these kids. They were from Bonners, and I was like, "Hey, man, do you mind if like I talked about where they were hunting? They were just hunting right there next to camp. And I said, "Hey, do you mind if I hike back to the next draw and set up camp there?" And they said, "Yeah, man, for sure. We're not going to go back there. We're just hunting right around here." So I ended up setting up a tent there because I had planned to come back with my father. If, this was pretty much just supposed to be a scouting trip. And unless I saw something that I liked, I wasn't going to shoot a spike. I wasn't going to shoot something small. But if I saw something that I liked, I was going to shoot it. So it was kind of a scouting trip. So I ended up getting all my stuff. I packed it up as quick as I could. I even forgot some things. I mean, I hiked out there, and I didn't, like I said, I only made it about a mile and a half back before I dropped camp because it was just too much on my back with the pack, with everything. And I mean, it hurts. Like it was rough. I don't say that lightly because I've had some pretty gnarly injuries that I try not to show if I'm in pain, but like if I had to drop camp there, like it was getting to me. It was rough. So I ended up dropping camp, got everything set up, went to hunt the night or the evening sit, and got to this little glassing knob, and I had seen some deer in the back of this draw where I was hunting now. I'd seen them back there when I had scouted, and so it just looked good. There was plenty of green feed. There were a ton of deadfalls, and it just, to me, there was a giant meadow, like a bald knob with a meadow and some evergreens up above this, but the back of this draw just looked good. So I knew that I'd seen a big buck back there when I was out scouting. So I went back there, got on for my evening sit, was glassing, and I ended up seeing a pretty good mule deer buck. It looked big from where I was. It was about 900 yards out. And I ended up getting my spotting scope out. I saw it was a beautiful 2x3. And I decided, yeah, I'm gonna put a stock on this. I want to see if I can make this happen. But it was getting close. So I ended up going around, put a stock on it. I got within 400 yards of it and just couldn't make it happen. It had gotten too dark with all the deadfalls there. There wasn't a possible shot. And it was tough. I think it was exactly like 428 yards out, something like that. And it didn't feel good, but I knew that passing it up was probably the right thing to do. I figured it would still be in the area. It didn't know I was there. So I backed out, went back, ate a mountain house, went to sleep, got woken up multiple times by some foxes skittering around my camp, and a mountain lion screaming in the middle of the night. So that was cool. It was raining all night with gnarly wind. And I remember thinking, man, is this just going to be another hunt that just gets blown out? Am I able to do this? Am I physically able to do this? Because I was hurting, and all of this was hard, but I wanted to try. I wanted to at least do it. And got up the next morning. And I should preface this by saying when I was coming back to camp, I got passed by two guys on KTMs. One of them had a deadhead on the back of his bike, so I knew one of them had gotten a nice buck. So along with the one that I saw and the one that he had, which, I mean, it was a nice buck. It was a solid 4x4, looked like just probably about a 160 somewhere in there, and it was a solid deer. So they had passed me that night. And then in the next morning, as I'm going out to my glassing knob, they end up passing me again. Ended up getting to where I had hunted the night before, just before I did. They passed me on the incline right before you summit where I'd been glassing, and they had dropped their stuff, and they were glassing into this draw. And I was like, dang, man. So I went up to them. I was talking with them, and they were super nice. Great guys. They own Kessner Electric here in Coeur d'Alene. Just fantastic dudes. So shout out to them. And as I'm talking to them, they're like, yeah, we were in the back the other day. I talked to them about the buck they shot, and he goes, well, where were you hunting? And I said, yeah, I've been hunting this draw. I was hunting this last night, and I saw a deer buck that I just couldn't get anything to happen. They were like, oh, really? Like, dude, we'll keep going. We have dirt bikes. Obviously, we have the upper hand on mobility for you, so we'll keep going. And I was like, are you sure? You guys got here first. If you want it, it's yours. And they said, yeah, man, for sure. We're gonna back out. We're just gonna keep going, and we hope you get something. I thought that was amazing. It really was. It felt like a godsend when everything else felt like it was going awry. So I go back down to where I'd been sitting. I start glassing, and it's probably about like 7:15, 7:30, and I hear this bike just start ripping along the trail, and I'm like, man, it's kind of late for someone to be getting out here. You'd think that they'd want to get in here before light, and he's just ripping, and you could hear it coming from back all the way where my truck was. So like 2 miles away, you could hear this bike ripping around. They stopped. I guess they'd glassed in one spot where the trees finally open up and you can see some of this straw. And then they continued on. And I'm just listening to them this whole time. And I'm, man, this kind of sucks, And I ended up seeing some elk right before they got there, which was super cool. It's always cool to see a bull chasing around his cows. And so that was a cool experience. But they get there and they stop right where those other guys had. And I'm like, man, that sucks. And they clearly saw me. Like, they saw me. You can't miss me. So I go up to him. I'm like, hey guys, there's just the one guy there. He was on this e-bike. And I'm not gonna say his name. I'm not gonna call him out, him or his business. It is what it is. But I go up there, and immediately he's just like standoffish, rude. And I was doing the same thing that I did to the KTM guys. I just wanted to talk. I feel like that's the right thing to do, especially if there's someone already there. You go like, hey man, like, what's going on? Where are you hunting? What are you doing? See if there's something that you can maybe come up with, like a game plan. Nope, not happening. Immediately he was like, so you're saying you were here first, so what? I said, no man, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, hey, I've been here since sunrise. I was here last night. My camp's just down the way. This is the draw that I'm predominantly hunting, like the back of this one area. And he said, you're saying we can't hunt here? And I said, no man, like, that's not at all what I'm saying. That, you're kind of jumping to conclusions. And he's, as we're doing that rigmarole, his buddy comes up on this little like 150, and that was the bike that I'd heard just ripping around. And his buddy gets there, and the guy goes, hey, this kid's telling us that we can't hunt here. And I said, dude, that's not what I'm saying at all. Like, what's your problem, dude? And I'm like, whatever, it's not worth it, man. So I go back down to where I'd been glassing. They're glassing. About 15 minutes later, and it's about 8:30, 8:45-ish at this point. About 15 minutes later, I see some mule deer bucks. And unfortunately, if I'm sitting here and the trail goes up and around this way, guys are sitting right up above me, and the deer on the side of the hill are directly in front of them. So they're off to my left. They're probably about 800 yards away from me, just because of the angle and where I was. And unbeknownst to me, the guys had actually walked around a little bit towards the side. And so I would guess that about the time that I saw these deer, they saw them as well, because they came right in front of them. And about 10 minutes later, as I'm like trying to figure out what to do, do I tell them, like, do I go up there and say, hey, I see these deer? This is a new experience for me, because I've never had someone drop into where I'm hunting and then literally sit right on top of me. So it was a first, but it's public land. It's all of ours. So it's a hard situation to know what to do.
Right. But there's like certain ethics, and I mean, things that I think a lot of us going to have the unwritten rules. And I do the same thing you do. Every time I see somebody coming up to where I'm already hunting, whether they see me or not, I will make myself known and just, hey, where are you going? How can I hunt around you? And vice versa. And pretty well always been able to work things out. I've not had a lot of problems, and it's always a bummer to hear about a guy that is confrontational about it when it's just so easy, especially when you have a dirt bike. You can kind of you can really cover ground versus the dude that's walking, right? Like, come on, man.
And
But
not only that, but like having dropped camp there and hunted there the night before, I'm not saying it's mine. I'm not saying I own it, but that I feel like that holds weight. Like if I had come up on someone who was like, yeah, I hiked in here, I dropped my camp, I hunted here last night and got on a buck that I almost shot. I'd really like to see if he's still in there. And he's there at sunrise glassing for that buck. I mean, and you get there a couple hours after sunrise. To me, that's like a no-brainer, you know?
absolutely,
And
I would keep going.
yeah, yeah. It was just a funny situation, but it's even funnier what it led to because as I'm struggling with that in my head, I hear a gunshot and I'm like, son of a bitch, you know? I'm going through all of these things in my head. And mind you, there had been two bucks, and I know for a fact that I'd seen both of these bucks before. One of them being the 2x3 that I'd seen the night before and put a stalk on, and then the better buck that I'd seen in the back of that same draw when I had been scouting. And I knew that because he had like a weird little crab claw on his right tine, on his right front tine. It was not like a wide fork, it was a crab claw. And both great bucks, both beautiful bucks. So I'm going through this, I'm like, dude, that freaking sucks. Well, I go up there and I'm talking to him and he's like, yeah, he just shot the 4x4, the bigger one. And I'm like, oh, so you didn't shoot that other one. And I told him, I was like, that's the one I was going for last night. And they both kind of look at me and they're like, what? And I said, yeah, man, that 2x3 is the one I was going for last night. And the one you shot, I had seen when I had been scouting. And they were like, you're not, it seemed weird to them because this unit is known for producing big bucks. And the guy who'd been a complete dickhead to me was like, seriously, you were gonna shoot the smaller one? And I go, yeah, man, like that's a great buck. And I told him, I said, look, like I can't go far, that other buck's still there. Do you mind if I shoot it? And I'm like, I'm trying to get in and out, man. I have a spine injury, like I can't go anywhere else. I might be able to get to the next draw, but it's at least another 2 miles just to the next draw, and it's up a gnarly hill. And he goes, well, dang, dude, now I feel bad. I kind of chuckled inside and I was like, well, yeah, I don't care that I have a spine injury, but now you feel bad. You didn't feel bad when you dropped in on me. It was whatever.
No kidding. Yeah.
And so the one guy had spine shot his buck, and his buck was still sitting there, still alive. And the smaller buck, the one I had stalked the night before, was still standing there like, what's going on? Well, it was a 612-yard shot. And I've practiced long shots. And I've figured out like what my bullet's gonna do. I've done all of this. And I'm not crazy comfortable shooting that far. Um, but I mean, it is what it is. And I definitely, if you're going to shoot that far, practice. And we went out to the range, you and I, and even though I knew that I could do 100, 200, 300, 400, and so on, you were there. I mean, I didn't feel like I'd been practicing enough, and then hitting the range, it was like, all right, man, like I feel like I can do this. And still a 600-yard shot, if anything goes wrong, like anything can go wrong. So I end up getting ready, getting set up on him. He's still just standing there. And I end up shooting him. And he was barely quartered away. And the bullet had drifted to the left a little. And I ended up hitting him a little further back than I wanted, which it was, come to find out, still a liver and lung shot. And I'm watching my buck and trying to see where he's going. And he goes and lays down, and all I can see is his antlers. But he was probably only like 20 yards away from the other buck. Well, then the guy who'd shot the bigger buck goes up and around, and goes down to shoot his deer again. And the reason they'd let me shoot my deer was because he was in the way of seeing his deer. Well, he had taken a couple steps and that's when I shot him. But they were like, yeah, man, like if he's still there, feel free to take the shot. So it was just really nice of them to let me do that, at least. But he goes up around, he shoots his buck, and I heard my buck crash. But since I had been watching him, I didn't realize my buck had gotten up and moved. So I heard my buck crash, and I go, oh, dang, like that really sucks. I don't know exactly where he went. I didn't think he had gone too far, but it's hard to tell, especially with that many deadfalls. So to shorten the story, I get up and over there. I go down to try and at least find this guy, figure out where he is, and to give you a sense of how many deadfalls there are, I had been about 40 yards to the right, maybe 40 to 50 yards somewhere in there to the right of him, and I didn't even see him. I'm looking around, I don't see him. So I go back all the way up. I find his bike. I go back down, straight down from his bike, and finally I find him. But that alone, it's a steep incline. I'm down there about 300 yards down the hill, and I have to hike all the way back up. Now I have to hike back down and find him, and I'm already, not in the best shape. So I find him. I start looking for my buck. 4.5 hours later, man, I finally find him. I find my buck. He's piled up underneath a tree. He'd slid down the hill, and his antlers and his back hooves had caught another tree, and his antlers caught the one tree he was under. And I was 10 yards away from him. I was right on top of him, man, and I couldn't see him. And I'd gone around looking for him, and I'd been 10 feet away from the spot that I got to where I could see him, and I was on top of a deadfall. So now it's 2:00, and I'm so excited, man. I'm stoked. I'm like, this is awesome. I'm so stoked. I call everyone. I'm like, dude, I got a buck. Now it's just the hard part of getting him out. And mule deer, for those of you that don't know, or if you do, you can attest to this. They are way bigger than whitetail, noticeably bigger than whitetail. And doing that alone too was tough. But I got him quartered out. I got everything. I got him butchered, and I got all 4 quarters off. Got his back straps. Got his head. Got all the meat I could, and now I'm left to pack out. So I get the packing done. I got all of the meat up to the trail, and I'm dead at this point. I'm dying, and it's about 6:00, and there's a storm rolling in. It's starting to snow. I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to get caught in a snowstorm. I don't want to camp out here if it snows, because the road up to this place too was rough. So I'm just going through all of these things.
So
I want to make it out.
Just to kind of summarize up till now, you did your scouting, found a great spot, found some bucks, had a plan for the morning. Plan gets rudely interrupted by some folks, some guys on a dirt bike. One of the guys shoots a buck out from underneath you. Your luck turns around because the other buck that you wanted the first place keeps standing there. You shoot him. Takes you like 4.5 hours to finally locate the buck. And folks that don't know, deadfall is referring to trees that have blown down in windstorms. A lot of times it happens in burn areas where the trees have been weakened and they die and they blow down real easy in the wind. And very common in high country in Idaho to have big swaths of timber blown over in the wind. And if you've never tried to navigate that, especially if it's mature timber, big, huge, round, giant logs, it is wicked tough. And you finally find your deer, which when you sent me the picture of your deer tucked up under that log, like it's almost a miracle that you find him. I mean, it'd be so easy just to never spot that fella like that. Find your deer. You're hurting because you're back, but you managed to get him butchered. And, Andrew's right. I know when I walked up on my first mule deer buck, I was like, this is a whole different animal than a whitetail. I mean, a big mature, even a medium mature mule deer could be a lot larger body than a lot of the whitetail that I've run into around here, and I've seen some bigger whitetail. So now you have a chore, you get it packed up to the mountain, and now the weather's blowing in. And in mountain country, even a slight bit of snow and ice can make an already treacherous road like life-threateningly dangerous if you're not on your A game with chains and stuff like that. So now you're sitting here facing a storm. This is all running through your mind about your safety, getting out of there, and you've got a camp and a load of meat to figure out how to even get to the truck, let alone drive out of there. All right. So, and you're in excruciating pain. So how did you manage to get yourself home?
Yeah, through honestly a miracle, man. I hiked all the meat down just above my camp, the trails here, and I put my camp just down a little hillside. So I got it all there, and by a stroke of luck, those guys that sorry, my dog's playing with a bottle right now. But no, that's no. By a stroke of luck, by a miracle, godsend, whatever you want to call it, man. Those guys on the KTMs rolled right back up, and they decided to stop and glass right about where I was just to see if anything was there. And I went up to them and was like, "Hey guys, I'm really trying to get out of here. The storm's rolling in. I shot this deer. Would you be willing to help me take some of the meat?" And they said, "Yeah, for sure." Like, no questions asked. They were like, "Yes, 100%." And they ended up taking the meat for me, all the meat, which was surprising. Not the head. I kept that, the head and the antlers. But they were like, "Dude, do you want us to take anything else? We can take your pack. We can take your gun, whatever." And I said, "No, man. I knew what I was getting into when I was doing this. I knew it was going to be hard. I knew it was going to hurt. And I felt like if I had them take more than that, um, that would be doing not only them a disrespect, but myself a disrespect." And I literally told him, I said, "I knew what I was getting myself into. And as a man, I need to do this because it's if you take the easy way out, it would have been so easy for me to take the easy way out, but you can't do that. I knew the consequences. I knew what I was getting myself into, and I had to do it. I had to finish it, which granted, like I said, they took the meat, which was amazing. I could have easily dropped the meat, hung it in a tree, gone back to my camp, gone back to my truck, whatever, and come back the next day. I knew that I didn't want to get caught in the snowstorm. It was going to be a rough one, and it was. It snowed about 3 inches that night. And by the time I'd gotten back to camp, I hiked all the way. I hiked, and it was dark when I got there, and it was snowing like crazy. By the time I got back there to camp, to where I dropped my tent, where my truck was, there was about an inch of snow on my tent. Like, it blew in hard, it blew in quick, and luckily a couple hours later it stopped. But that night alone, like, the 3 inches was pretty rough. And that's the next morning I had texted those kids that were out there, and that's after it had settled. So that's not a light snowstorm, but I'm so glad that I didn't get caught in that. So they had instead of parking in the main area, which the main area, there's like two or three cars can park there, but it's basically a road where people have kind of moved the deadfalls, and they had actually parked on the lower side in Montana and taken their dirt bikes up a different trail to get there. So I drove my truck down, I met them, got my meat, and I could barely move, man. Like, I could barely walk. It was rough. But I knew what I got myself into. I did it, and honestly, it was an amazing experience. I do wish my father had been there for it, because that next week we were supposed to go out, and we did, but that was a much different type of hunting that we did. We were going to come back to that same spot, but I said, "There's no way in hell I can't do this again until I get my back fixed." So we chased around deer throughout the rest of the state in some of the easier country of Idaho. But yeah, it was crazy. I drove myself home that night, got home, unloaded, and man, the whole time I was just blown away, because I'd finally proven to myself that I could do it, that I could get out there. And I've shot deer before in some gnarly spots, but I haven't wanted to go on a hunt where I've wanted to do it, then scouted for it, then put the wheels in motion, gone out and actually got it done. I've gone out for elk. I've gone out for deer, but that's just me driving to a spot, hiking around a little bit. I've gone on backpacking trips for mule deer before, but I've never gotten it done. And that's always been with someone else. It was, oh, dog just knocked something over, but it was really amazing, man. It really was such an amazing experience. To be able to have done that and like first mule deer. And I'm definitely going back there next year. I'm going to get there the night before opening day, or the day before opening day. And I have a buddy from work who wants to take his son out for his first mule deer. And um, like what a cool experience that'll be for me to take someone else out to that spot where I got my first mule deer and get someone's kid on it. So
Heck yeah,
I'm looking
man.
forward to it.
Well, yeah, there's a huge accomplishment, and when you get, you go out and you succeed solo, right? I mean, solo hunting in the lack of better terms, wilderness. I mean, I know that there's kind of dirt bike accessible, but um, for folks that are not experienced, mountain hunting and camping in the kind of backcountry settings, like it's intimidating to do by yourself for all the bumps in the nights or a mountain lion screaming in the middle of the night. I've been camping and had sow grizzlies making crazy noises during the grizzly rut, a few hundred yards from my tent, and it's intimidating for sure. So just that being alone and making yourself get out there and do it, eventually it becomes kind of normal. You get used to the sounds in the wilderness and you get used to the predators being out there. You respect them, but you don't let the fear of them bug you so much, and you get used to being out in the dark, so but that takes time, and some people grew up with that their whole lives, and they can't even comprehend. What do you mean you have to get used to it? That's just normal. Like to them, that was always normal. To some of us, that became normal. To some folks, that can only get out once or twice. Especially if you don't live out in the West. You might only be getting out into the wilderness out here. Not that you can't have some really great camping trips. Camp hunting trips are kind of similar experiences out east. Folks that don't experience it, it's hard to explain to them what it means when I say it kind of becomes normal. But it's less concerning when you're with buddies, but when you're by yourself, it's definitely an intimidating thing to do the first handful of times at least. So that's really cool. And then, I know that as much as I love hunting with friends, when I've gotten animals and been successful solo all the way through the pack out, that's kind of special too. I like the camaraderie of hunting. I like my mule deer trip with my friends, but I like to get out and do a few things by myself, and it's really fun to get it done solo because you just feel very accomplished to be able to do it, especially as a newer hunter, right? Or newer to a certain species or type of hunting. So that's an accomplishment, man, and I think you deserve to be happy about that, proud of that. You did leave out the part. We don't have to dig into it because we are running short on time, but you did leave out the part where you hit a black bear on your way out of the mountains.
I did. I hit a black bear, and I think I'll say it quick. I think it's funny that you mentioned the mountain lion because I was on this trip as I was hiking out, stalked by a mountain lion as I'm hiking out. I had the deer head on my shoulders or on my back, obviously with Hunter's Orange on it, but one followed me for 300 yards or so. And I think it's funny because the last time I was down in this same area ish, my dad and I were stalked by a mountain lion too. And the kids that were from Bonners said, they had heard a mountain lion kill a deer. They watched a mountain lion kill a deer and then heard the deer screaming, and right before I'd gotten there, so it's definitely not for the faint of heart. And to keep it short, it's not my first time being in the wilderness alone. It's not my first time taking these backpacking trips. It is my first time really like backpacking in for hunting and for hunting mule deer. Like I've gone out, I've camped, for whitetail and for elk, but it's it's never been in this type of terrain besides that time that my dad and I went 13 miles back in the gospel hump looking for mule deer. Kind of, you're familiar with that terrain, and that was, we were laughed at by one of the outfitters there for even doing it. But we didn't come out with a mule deer, so it's definitely hard to comprehend until you do it. But and this, like I
Yeah.
said, this wasn't the hardest backpacking trip ever. By no means was it a hard backpacking trip. I only went like 2 miles back. What made it the hardest backpacking trip of my life was fresh off of a hip surgery from earlier this year and throwing a pack on my back that, in all honesty, was probably something I shouldn't have done.
Yeah.
Don't let anyone else hear this, but it's
Well,
like,
you did it, man. And I don't want to take away from the fact that you did something that was cool and you accomplished a goal. But I do think, you can still use your tale as a cautionary tale, right?
mm,
Getting into that frustratingly stubborn aspect of young men. One of the biggest issues that we run into, and I run into this all the time, especially with the circles that I run. I hang out with a lot of alpha dog type guys, and, we always feel like we have to prove ourselves. I think it's just a man feat trait, right? We got to prove ourselves. And if we're not out there doing it, sometimes it makes us feel inadequate, and our egos get in the way.
for sure.
And our egos can get us in trouble. I think you would have made it out okay, but I mean, say you had an exceptionally serious injury, not just you, but I mean, if someone were to be in a world of hurt, man, like, don't listen to this and think that anybody's ever going to advocate for you to be like, hey, man, I broke my leg, but I got to pack out this elk by myself. Like, thanks for the offer. Like, don't try to be so tough is that it puts you in a life-threatening situation, right?
Yeah.
You need to know your limitations, know your body, know where you're at, and know when to say enough is enough. And if it means humbling yourself and accepting some help so that you can live to hunt another day, then that's what you got to do, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, dude, I couldn't tell you, there's all kinds of stories in the last couple of years I've had in the backcountry, where people have helped, and I'm super grateful for their help, and I'm very humbled by their help. I mean, just for this year alone, getting rescued off the river and having somebody tow our boat out, and I mean, those kinds of things, right? Not that those were physical limitations and a boat motor was out of my control, but it doesn't feel good to be like, oh man, we're dumb and we broke down on the river. And we're not good mechanics. Not that there was anything we could have done had we been good mechanics. That boat motor was toast. But yeah, it's a little bit embarrassing to be broke down and put yourself in a bad situation. But sometimes we got to swallow that pride and allow ourselves to not be in a bad situation.
100%, man. And even if it's just having someone take some meat out for you, even if it's having someone tow your boat down the river, that's how it goes sometimes. Humbling yourself to let that happen, and knowing that even though it didn't come to fruition this time, it might have not have gone exactly how you wanted it to this time. Doesn't mean that it was a bad experience. All of these things are an experience, and they're a part of you. All you can do is learn from it, grow from it, and be the best you that you can.
Yep. And I mean, you have that one story about the hunter that dropped in on you and was kind of a jerk, but I mean, you have a great story about some people that were willing to help you.
Mm-hmm.
And so talk about an opportunity too, that you just to glorify God, right? I was talking about glorifying God in all situations, and that's an opportunity to do that. God sent you some folks that helped you out, and he sent the right people at the right time, that with the right tools and abilities to help you get out of that situation. And so that's incredible. And he did the same thing for Chad and I this year with the jet boat, the right people at the right time with the right tools and abilities, and they helped us out, and forever grateful. So yeah, man, I think there's a lot of cool things about that story, a lot of cool elements, from being your first mule deer, doing it solo, a little bit of your stubbornness, but also ending up needing and accepting some help. And it's just good, man. I hope the listeners enjoyed listening to it. I know I've enjoyed listening to it. I got to hear even more detail now than I've gotten to hear from you in the past. And so that was good, man. As far as the future, I'd like to maybe have you back on. We could talk more about some of your whitewater and fishing guiding trips, man, because that's actually something I don't know if I've gotten to talk to you a whole heck of a lot. I know a little bit, but it might be fun to talk about that and all those kinds of things, man. And I'm sure you're going to have some great stories once you get healed that you're going to develop over the years. So, dude, I appreciate your time very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, dude. Thanks. It's kind of last minute. I hit you up today. I was like, dude, can we do a podcast? I need some content. And like the good friend that you are, you jumped up and said, absolutely. So, yeah, dude, thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on. And I look forward to being back regardless what it's for. I have some pretty cool hunts lined up next year, at least in 3 different states so far. So hopefully it'll be for that.
Yeah, man. Well, as we get close to next fall, we'll definitely maybe do some podcasts where we just talk about planning some of these trips out, because you got a lot to plan, and it'd be interesting to see how you accomplish this next fall logistically.
I do. Yep.
But yeah, and then for the listeners, one note before we go, I just talked to a good buddy of mine who has not been on the show, but John Wyke from Northwest Spur Chasers, who's been on the show, I think 3 times now. A good buddy of ours, and I think John and I have both mentioned him in previous episodes, Bruce Whalen. Bruce Whalen is a turkey hunting buddy, a veteran from the military, lives out in Western Washington. Bruce Whalen, you can follow him on Instagram and Facebook, and I bring him up because he makes custom wing bone calls. Bruce told me this evening, right before I jumped on this podcast, that he was going to donate 2 wing bone calls for which I could sell, and the proceeds will go to my drift boat fundraiser. So if you're out there listening to this, if you made it to an hour and 25 minutes of Andrew and I bumping our gums here, there's definitely an opportunity there. If you're interested in a custom wing bone call, I'll probably just do something like you can either Venmo me or just make the donation straight to the GoFundMe for that wing bone call, or maybe we'll figure out a way to do an auction or something along those lines. But if you're interested in a custom wing bone call, I'll accept the money and give you Bruce's contact info, and he will do custom colors or whatever you want done on that wing bone call. I have a couple of his wing bone calls. They're fantastic. I like them. I've used them, and I think that anybody that's interested in a wing bone trumpet call is what they are. They're a trumpet call made out of turkey wing bones. Fantastic items. So looking forward to getting that out. We'll be posting that on social media here in the next probably 24 hours, because I'll be flying tomorrow, so I'll have time when I'm sitting around at an airport. And we'll get that information out there and hopefully continue to make some money. We raised some money the last few days. Andrew's mom hooked it up with a donation. So thanks again, Ann. That was huge. And we just grateful for everybody out there that supported this effort to get a drift boat for Protector's Peak. It will make a difference in a place that's already making a difference. You can go back and listen to that podcast again with Nate Harder, Protector's Peak. So thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Adios.
Thanks again. And if this resonates with you, I want to welcome you to the tribe and encourage you to share this podcast with your friends. Hit subscribe and follow us on Instagram at Pursuing Freedom Outdoors. And if you or someone you know has a great story about life or the wilderness, I want to share it. You can shoot me a message on Instagram or email me with all inquiries and questions at thomas@pursuingfreedomoutdoors.com. That's Thomas, THOMAS, at pursuingfreedomoutdoors.com. Until next time, get out there, get after it, and pursue freedom in the outdoors. Before we get started, I want to thank our first partner, Response Ready Medical. Response Ready Medical, bringing our customers the best quality training and equipment for the worst case scenario. Response Ready Medical's vision is to be the leading provider of emergency preparedness solutions across the United States, empowering communities, organizations, and individuals to respond confidently and preserve life during critical moments. Offering same-day certification, all response-ready medical classes are instructed by nationally registered and state-licensed firefighter, paramedics, law enforcement officers, and hospital staff. Classes currently being offered by Response Ready Medical include CPR and AED, CPR, AED, and first aid, emergency trauma care, child and babysitting safety, CABS, backcountry medicine, and wilderness first aid. Your premium partner in emergency preparedness, Response Ready Medical.